My name is Darlene G. Antonio, 32 years old, and the night my boyfriend said he and his ex-girlfriend were working things out was the night I stopped participating in his performance. I work in commercial real estate development. Structured job, predictable hours, spreadsheets, site visits, timelines that either hold or don't. I like order. I live in a mid-sized city, and my life is pretty low drama by design. Gym in the morning, work, dinner at home, repeat, and it's not exciting, but it's steady, and I've always trusted steady more than sparkle. My boyfriend, Caleb, 29, works in marketing for a hospitality group. We'd been together just under 3 years. We didn't technically live together, but he kept clothes at my place and spent 4 or 5 nights a week there, enough that most of our friends assumed we were basically married already, just without the paperwork. Caleb thrives on attention, not in an acute way, in a constant performance way. Every social event becomes a stage. Every person who talks to him becomes an audience member he has to impress. Early on, I thought it was harmless confidence. Over time, it started feeling like he needed validation, the way most people need oxygen. His ex-girlfriend Ariana has always hovered in the background. They dated for 4 years before me. Caleb claimed it ended because she wasn't ready to grow up, but her name came up constantly anyway. Ariana used to take me here. Ariana loved this band. Ariana hated this restaurant. I let it slide at first because I don't compete with ghosts, and I told myself, the past is only loud when you keep feeding it. About 4 months ago, Caleb started mentioning Ariana had reached out, just to check in, just friendly, just closure. That word, closure, he framed it like emotional maturity, like I should be impressed that he was so evolved. I said fine, as long as boundaries are clear, and I meant it. If he needed a conversation to close a chapter, he could have it. But I wasn't interested in a sequel. Then the hotel game night started. Caleb told me his coworker group rents conference suites at a downtown boutique hotel after work for board game nights and drinks. I thought it was corporate networking nonsense. Once or twice a month turned into every Thursday, then some Saturdays. And I noticed it without making a big deal of it, because sometimes adult life gets busy, and you don't want to be the person who interrogates a calendar like it's evidence. Ariana conveniently worked in that same downtown district. Caleb never said that like it mattered, but the detail sat there anyway, quiet, waiting. Last Friday, we were at a birthday dinner for one of his co-workers. Wine flowing, a loud table, everyone half performing for each other. The kind of night where people laugh a little too hard because they want to be remembered as fun. Someone made a joke about Caleb having 2 lives. He laughed and said, "Sometimes you have to keep your options flexible," like it was charming, like it was a line he'd practiced. I asked what that meant. He looked at me completely unbothered and said, "Ariana and I are working things out." Not arguing, not apologetic, just stating it like a fact, like he was updating me on the weather. The table went quiet for half a second. Then Caleb added, "Don't be dramatic, Darlene. We're just figuring out what makes sense long term. Like I was a contract up for review. Like my role in his life had an expiration date and he was shopping for a renewal." I took a sip of my drink and said, "That's fine. Then do it as a single man." His face changed immediately. That was the first crack in the performance, the first moment the audience realized the stage might collapse. So yeah, I left him that same night, not in a dramatic storm-out way. No yelling, no scene. We left the restaurant separately because he insisted we not ruin the vibe. And the way he said that, the way he protected the atmosphere more than the relationship, told me I didn't need to argue to understand what was happening. I drove home, took a shower, and started separating my stuff from his. Technically, the apartment was mine. My name was on the lease. He contributed groceries sometimes and paid for random decor he insisted on adding. But financially, this was my place, my stability, my foundation, and that mattered more in that moment than any emotional speech. Caleb came in around midnight, already defensive, and he launched into it before I even said anything. He told me I embarrassed him. He told me I blindsided him. He told me I could have talked to him privately. I told him I did talk to him privately at the table when he announced he was exploring his future with his ex-girlfriend. He rolled his eyes and said I was twisting it. He said Ariana and he were just seeing if there were unresolved feelings. That doesn't mean he was leaving me. That was the part that actually bothered me, the entitlement baked into it. In his mind, he was allowed to test drive reconciliation while keeping me as the stable option, like I was an insurance policy he could keep in his pocket while he went shopping for excitement. I told him I don't share relationships. If he was working things out with someone else, he was single. Immediately, he switched tactics fast. He said I was insecure. He said grown adults can have complex emotional conversations. He said I was making it black and white when life isn't. I told him life might not be black and white, but commitment is. Then I handed him a small overnight bag I'd packed with essentials. Not throwing him out, just making the transition clear, and I watched his expression flicker because he expected emotion, not logistics. I told him he could come back tomorrow while I was at work and collect the rest. He actually laughed like this was a bluff and said, "You're not serious, Darlene." I was, and I think he realized it when I calmly asked for the spare key back. He didn't give it to me that night. He stormed into the guest room and slammed the door like the noise could reverse reality. I slept fine. The next morning I left early, texted him that I'd be out until 6, and told the doorman to let him up one last time. Around noon he started texting, first angry, then confused, then soft. "You're really ending 3 years over a conversation." No, I was ending 3 years over him publicly announcing he was auditioning my replacement by dinner. He switched again and told me I don't understand. Ariana and he were working things out because she finally realized what she lost, and that doesn't erase what we have. That was the moment it clicked. Caleb didn't want to choose. He wanted to win. So I replied with one sentence, "Then go win, just do it single." And I blocked him. Blocking him didn't feel dramatic. It felt procedural. I expected him to pivot fully back to Ariana once the safety net disappeared, because that's what someone does when they announce they're working things out, right? By the next morning, he was emailing me. Work email. Subject line, "Please don't do this." He said I misunderstood. He said Ariana reached out because she regretted how things ended. He said he was just getting clarity. He said mature people don't throw away relationships over insecurity. Insecurity. I read that word 3 times, and the part he didn't seem to grasp was that I wasn't competing with Ariana. I was reacting to his behavior. If he wanted clarity, he could have gotten it while single. That option was always available. I didn't respond. Instead, I did something simple. I removed him from my streaming accounts, changed the Wi-Fi password, logged out of my shopping profile on his tablet. Practical stuff, quiet severing, the small benefits people don't notice until they're gone. That afternoon, I ran into someone unexpected at the coffee shop near my office. Leo. He worked with Caleb. Mid-30s, quiet, sharp, observant, the type who listens more than he speaks. I'd met him at a few work events. We'd always gotten along fine. Nothing flirty, just normal conversation. He looked slightly uncomfortable when he saw me, like he'd been hoping not to run into the real version of the story. After a minute, he came over and asked, "So, are you okay?" Apparently, Caleb had already framed it at work. According to him, I overreacted to a harmless conversation and stormed out. I asked Leo what harmless meant in that version. He hesitated, then said he didn't think I got the full story about the hotel nights. That got my attention. Leo told me the game nights weren't big group events most of the time. Sometimes they started that way. But more than once, Caleb and Ariana stayed after everyone left. The hotel bar staff knew them by name. Leo didn't give graphic details. He didn't need to. The implication was enough. Caleb wasn't figuring things out. He was already running a parallel relationship. I felt surprisingly calm, not hurt, not shocked, validated. Leo finished his coffee, and before leaving, he said something that turned my calm into something sharper. "Just so you know," he said, lowering his voice, "Ariana doesn't know about you." That sentence sat in my head long after he walked away. Ariana doesn't know about you. At first, I assumed he meant she didn't know we were still serious, that Caleb downplayed us. But Leo had been clear. He meant Ariana thought I wasn't even in the picture. He meant Ariana believed she was rebuilding something clean, something simple, something exclusive. And suddenly I understood exactly how Caleb was able to announce at a dinner table that he and Ariana were working things out, because in his mind, he'd already been phasing me out in one version of reality while keeping me fully intact in the other. That night, I didn't unblock him. I didn't call. I didn't send a dramatic message demanding explanations. I just sat with it, because if Ariana thought Caleb was single, then she believed she was the only story. And if I reacted loudly, Caleb would paint me as the jealous ex proving his narrative right. So I didn't react. I planned. The next day I went to work like nothing had exploded, because the world doesn't pause for your personal revelations, and commercial real estate development doesn't care if your boyfriend just announced he was test driving his ex-girlfriend in public. I sat at my desk, opened spreadsheets, answered emails, joined a site call, and felt oddly detached, like the version of me who would have spiraled had been replaced by someone calmer, someone procedural. Caleb kept trying. He emailed again, then texted from a different number, then tried calling twice. His messages swung between righteous anger and wounded confusion. He told me I was cold. He told me I was throwing away 3 years over one dinner. He told me I was making everything black and white because I was insecure. It was the same pattern repeated with different words, and the more he repeated it, the clearer it became that he wasn't trying to understand what he did. He was trying to get me back into my assigned role. The safe option. The stable base. The person who would absorb the mess so he didn't have to. At lunch, I checked my building camera feed because I had a feeling, and sure enough, Caleb was downstairs talking to the doorman like he belonged there. He wasn't shouting. He didn't have to. He was smiling, controlled, like the whole thing was a misunderstanding that would be fixed by proximity. The doorman called my phone and asked if I wanted him sent up. I said no. A few minutes later, Caleb texted, "I'm downstairs. This is ridiculous." I didn't answer. Then he tried something softer. "I miss you." That line would have landed differently a year ago. Now it sounded like a tool, like he'd pulled it out because anger didn't work. By the time I got home that evening, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't even angry. I was in the same headspace I get in when a deal falls apart and you have to pivot fast, because you can either cling to what you wanted or you can protect what's real. Caleb had left a pile of his things by the door. Not everything, just enough to imply cooperation. A peace offering staged for optics. On top of it, he'd placed my spare key, like returning it was some grand gesture instead of the minimum requirement. I stared at the key for a long second, then picked it up and set it in a drawer. Not because I wanted to keep it, because I didn't want it to feel like a moment. No moments. No dramatic beats. Just closure. My phone buzzed again. "Caleb?" I gave the key back. "Can we talk now?" I read it and felt something almost funny rise in my throat. Not laughter exactly, more like disbelief. He still thought the key was the obstacle, like the issue was access, not disrespect. I didn't respond. Instead, I did what I always do when a situation needs to be finalized. I made a list. Change the locks. Cancel the shared reservation he'd made for next month without asking me. Remove him from anything tied to my address. Check my accounts for saved cards. Make sure my lease records had no mention of him. It wasn't petty, it was maintenance. When someone tries to live two versions of reality, you don't negotiate better boundaries. You remove their ability to blur the lines. That night, I got another email from him. Longer, more carefully written, like he'd drafted it and redrafted it until it sounded reasonable. He said he never meant to humiliate me. He said Ariana and he were just working through unresolved feelings. He said he didn't announce it to hurt me. He announced it because he thought honesty would be appreciated. He said he assumed I understood relationships are complex, and he asked why I couldn't be mature about it. Mature. That word again. People use mature when they want you to tolerate disrespect quietly. I didn't reply. I went to bed early, slept fine, and woke up with the same steady certainty I'd had since dinner. The certainty wasn't that Caleb was a villain. The certainty was that Caleb was comfortable with a structure where he got to explore and I got to wait. The next morning I did something I hadn't planned. I reached out to Leo. Not because I needed gossip, because I needed timelines. I texted him a simple message, casual, contained. Coffee today, same place, 10 minutes, I just want clarity. Leo responded almost immediately. Yeah, I can. We met near my office, the same coffee shop where he'd first looked uncomfortable seeing me, like he'd realized the real story didn't match the one Caleb was selling. Leo arrived on time, sat down, and didn't waste energy pretending this was small talk. I'm not interested in revenge, I told him. I'm not trying to start drama at your workplace. I just need facts. When did Caleb start telling people we were over? Leo's jaw tightened slightly, like he'd been hoping I wouldn't ask that question directly. About 2 months ago, he said. 2 months. That number landed in my chest like a measured weight. 2 months ago meant the dinner wasn't a spontaneous confession. It was a slip. It meant Caleb had been slowly staging an exit in one version of his life while still sleeping in my bed 4 or 5 nights a week in the other. I kept my voice calm. What exactly was he telling people? Leo looked down at his coffee, then back up. He said you two were basically done, but still in a gray area, that you were emotionally distant, that he was trying to be patient because you were struggling to let go. I almost smiled. Not because it was funny. Because it was so cleanly strategic. If I ever reacted, if I ever showed up angry, that narrative would have proof. He'd already built the frame. I asked the question I didn't want to ask but needed to. And Ariana? Leo nodded once. She thinks he's been single since spring. So it wasn't just coworkers. It was Ariana. Ariana believed she was rebuilding something without overlap, without betrayal, without another person still standing inside the picture. I sat back slightly, letting it settle, and Leo watched me like he expected tears or rage. Instead, I asked, "Does she come to those hotel nights?" Leo hesitated. "Not always, but enough. And Darlene, she seemed serious about him." Of course she did. In her version, Caleb chose her. In her version, she won. And Caleb was letting her believe that because it made her easier to manage. I finished my coffee slowly, then said, "One more thing. Does Caleb know you're telling me this?" Leo shook his head. "No." Good. Because the moment Caleb realized where the leak was, he'd start plugging holes, tightening stories, turning people into enemies to protect his version of events. I wasn't interested in chasing a moving target. I stood up and thanked Leo, and he looked relieved, like he'd been holding his breath waiting for me to demand something from him. But I didn't demand anything. I already had what I needed. Timeline. Pattern. Intent. On the walk back to my office, I felt the decision settle fully into place. If Caleb wanted flexibility, fine. If he wanted options, fine. If he wanted to manage narratives, fine. But he wasn't going to do it with my name still attached. I wasn't going to scream at him. I wasn't going to post vague captions. I wasn't going to create a public spectacle that he could twist into proof that I was unstable. I was going to do the one thing that collapses parallel realities every time. I was going to introduce accuracy. That afternoon, I found Ariana online. Not through Caleb, not through mutual friends. I searched her name the way you search a company record. Quietly, carefully, verifying you have the right person before you move. Her profile showed the same city, hospitality operations, a polished photo, a smile that looked practiced but not cruel. I drafted a message and deleted it twice, not because I doubted what I was doing, but because I refused to sound emotional. Emotion gives people angles. Emotion gives them space to argue about tone instead of truth. So I wrote something simple. "Hi, you don't know me, but I think we've been given different versions of the same story. If you're serious about Caleb, you deserve accurate information. I'm not contacting you to fight. I'm contacting you to correct a timeline." I attached one photo, not a romantic pose, not a dramatic screenshot, just a recent group picture from a friend's barbecue 3 weeks earlier. Caleb sitting at my kitchen island, my apartment clearly visible in the background. Date stamp visible because my friend posted it publicly. Then I hit send. For a few minutes, nothing happened, and I told myself that was fine because the point wasn't to provoke Ariana. The point was to remove myself from the lie. Then my phone buzzed. A new message from Ariana. 2 words. "Who is this?" I stared at Ariana's message for a few seconds before replying, not because I didn't know what to say, but because I wanted to keep the tone exactly where it needed to be. Calm, factual, no emotional edges. Caleb could later twist into proof that I was unstable. "My name is Darlene G. Antonio," I wrote. "I've been Caleb's girlfriend for the past 3 years. We were still together as of last Friday." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then appeared again. "Caleb told me you two broke up months ago." Of course he did. I responded with another screenshot, this one from my apartment hallway security camera, time-stamped the morning after one of Caleb's so-called hotel game nights. The image showed Caleb leaving my place at 7:14 a.m. with his overnight bag. There was a long pause after that. Then Ariana sent one word. "Call," I answered. Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was confused in a way that only happens when someone realizes the story they believed might not be the real one. "Darlene," she said slowly, like testing the name. "Yes." She exhaled softly. "Caleb told me you two had been done since spring." "We weren't." Another silence. Then she asked the question that told me everything. "Have you two been together recently?" "Yes." The line went quiet again. I could hear the faint sound of traffic through her phone, like she had stepped outside somewhere to make the call. Finally, she spoke again. "He told me you were having a hard time letting go." That almost made me laugh, but I kept my voice steady. "He's been staying at my apartment 4 or 5 nights a week." Another silence. Then she said quietly, "Okay." That one word carried the weight of realization. I didn't try to convince her further. I didn't pile on details. The timeline was already enough. "I'm not contacting you to compete for him," I said. "I stepped out the moment he told me you two were working things out. I just don't believe in being used as a prop in someone else's story." She absorbed that for a second. Then she asked one final question. "Did he know you were going to tell me?" "No." That answer seemed to matter to her. "All right," she said. "I need to make a call." The line ended. I sat at my desk for a moment afterward, looking at my phone, not waiting for anything dramatic to happen, just letting the quiet settle. Because once 2 people start comparing timelines, the truth doesn't need much help. About 2 hours later, my phone rang. "Blocked number," I answered. Caleb's voice came through sharp and controlled. Why are you talking to Ariana? I leaned back in my chair. Because you introduced her into my relationship, he scoffed. You're sabotaging this. No, I said calmly. I corrected a timeline. His tone shifted immediately from controlled to irritated. You're being petty. I asked one question. Did you tell her we were still together? Silence. Then deflection. You're twisting everything again. That was confirmation enough. He continued talking, accusing me of trying to ruin his chance at happiness, accusing me of reacting out of jealousy, accusing me of refusing to accept reality. The irony of that sentence almost impressed me. I already accepted reality, I said. That's why you're single now. He hung up. About 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Leo, you might want to check Instagram. I opened the app. Caleb had just posted a photo. Dim lighting, hotel bar, 2 glasses of wine on a table. Caption, choosing clarity. The comments were already filling up. Fire emojis, heart reactions, friends cheering him on. Then I noticed a comment near the top from Ariana. We need to talk. The post stayed up for about 15 minutes. Then it vanished. Not just the comment, the entire photo, which told me their conversation didn't go the way Caleb expected. An hour later, my phone started lighting up with unknown numbers. 3 calls in a row, different numbers. I let them ring. Then a text arrived from one of them. Pick up, we need to talk. No name attached, but I didn't need one. It was Caleb. I didn't answer. If he wanted to communicate, he could do it cleanly. No more private conversations that could later be reframed. About an hour later, Leo texted again. It's loud at work. Apparently, Caleb had stepped outside twice that afternoon to take calls. His tone wasn't calm. It wasn't composed. It was defensive. And something else had changed. Ariana hadn't shown up at the hotel that Thursday night. For weeks, those Thursdays were automatic. Now there was a gap. The next morning, Caleb sent me an email. Subject line, please stop escalating this. He accused me of sabotaging his happiness, said I blindsided Ariana with half-truths, said I was trying to control the narrative. Control the narrative. Interesting phrase. I replied with exactly one sentence. I told her the timeline. That's not escalation. That's accuracy. He didn't respond to that directly. Instead, he pivoted. Suddenly, Leo became the villain. Caleb implied Leo had always been jealous of his position at work. Said Leo probably exaggerated details to get attention. Here's the problem. I had never told Caleb that Leo and I spoke, which meant he was guessing, trying to plug leaks. And the fact that he couldn't identify the source told me everything I needed to know. His system was rattled. He didn't know which version of his story had collapsed. He only knew something had shifted. That Saturday, I went to a small art exhibit downtown. Leo happened to be there with a few coworkers. We talked casually, public space, normal conversation, nothing secretive. Someone snapped a group photo. Later that night, I reposted the photo to my story with one word. Saturday. No commentary, no explanation. Within minutes, Caleb viewed the story, then viewed it again. Then another unknown number called. I let it ring. Because for the first time since the dinner, Caleb didn't have direct access to rewrite the moment privately. He was watching from the outside. And that's when the second life he'd been balancing started to lose its balance. By Monday, the shift had started. Leo didn't have to explain it for me to understand. I could feel it through the tone of his texts and the pauses between his updates. Caleb hadn't posted anything since deleting the hotel photo. No motivational captions, no curated selfies, no polished performances, just silence. That usually meant he was recalibrating. Apparently, Ariana had started asking questions. Not dramatic ones, not emotional ones, just specific timeline questions. Dates, weekends, where he said he was versus where he actually was. Parallel lives only work when no one compares notes. Once 2 people start lining up calendars, the illusion collapses fast. Around mid-afternoon, my building doorman called me. Miss Antonio, there's a man downstairs asking to see you. I already knew who it was. Is it Caleb? Yes. Don't send him up. The doorman paused for a second, then said, understood. 10 minutes later, a mutual friend texted me. She's downstairs crying. That made me smile slightly. Caleb had already shifted the narrative again. Now, apparently, he was the heartbroken one, the person begging for another chance. I didn't go downstairs. I had already given him the cleanest boundary possible. If he wanted to work things out with Ariana, he could do it single. That offer didn't expire. About an hour later, the same friend sent another message. She says, you're enjoying this. I wasn't enjoying anything. I was detached. I told the friend to pass along one sentence. I didn't create 2 versions of his life. He did. That evening, Leo called. Apparently, Ariana had confronted Caleb at work. Not loudly, not dramatically, Just directly. She asked him why she was finding out from someone else that he'd still been staying at my apartment. Caleb tried to frame it as complicated overlap. He told her emotions were messy. He told her relationships sometimes transition gradually. Messy only works when both people consent to the mess. Ariana didn't. Leo told me the moment that changed everything. Ariana asked Caleb to show her his messages. He refused. That was when she stood up and left. No shouting. No public scene. Just walked out. By Wednesday, the hotel game night group chat went quiet. By Thursday, Caleb took a personal day from work. By Friday, something surfaced that even I hadn't expected. Someone who worked security at the hotel leaked a still image from the lobby cameras into a small local gossip forum. The image showed Caleb and Ariana standing close together in the lobby 3 weeks earlier. Not distant, not ambiguous, very clearly not closure. The timestamp was visible. The date matched a night Caleb told me he was at a marketing team event. The post didn't tag either of them. It didn't need to. People recognized the setting. People recognized the faces. And for the first time, Caleb couldn't call me to control the damage. He couldn't text me to accuse me. He couldn't rewrite the narrative privately. All he could do was watch as the two lives he had carefully managed finally collided in public. And I stayed exactly where I'd been the whole time, silent. By the following week, the shift was visible everywhere. Caleb tried to keep showing up at work like nothing had happened. Same outfits, same confident posture, same performative laugh in meetings. But people were watching him differently. If you spend enough time around social dynamics, you learn to recognize that change instantly. The smiles get tighter, conversations get shorter, invitations get quieter. Ariana stopped coming by the office entirely. Leo told me she had taken a few days off. Apparently, she hadn't known about how frequent the hotel nights were. She thought they were occasional emotional check-ins, not weekly private meetups layered over a live relationship. Once timelines line up, there's no arguing with them. But the real collapse didn't come from the hotel photo. It came from something simpler. Someone in Caleb's friend group leaked screenshots. Different messages Caleb had sent to different people about the situation. In one version, he said Ariana was pursuing him and he was trying to be careful. In another version, he said I was unstable and he was trying to disengage gently. In Ariana's version, he was single. Once those screenshots circulated privately, the performance ended. People don't mind messy. They mind dishonest. I didn't post anything. I didn't comment. I didn't respond to the gossip. Instead, I kept living. I started going out again, seeing friends I had ignored while trying to be the stable center of Caleb's chaos. I started saying yes to invitations I used to decline because he might have plans. Leo and I ended up at another event together. Nothing secretive. Nothing staged. Just two adults having a conversation without games. Someone tagged us in a group photo. This time I didn't even repost it. Didn't need to. Caleb saw it anyway through the same network he once controlled. I heard later that he'd tried to spin it. He told people I moved on too fast. He told them Leo had always been interested in me. He told them I'd been emotionally distant for months. But here's what happens when your narrative collapses publicly. People start asking for proof, and he didn't have any. By the end of the month, Ariana had cut contact with him. Not loudly. Not vindictively. Just quietly. Which ironically was exactly how I had left him. The difference was I never circled back. He tried to reach me a few times through mutual friends. I declined every message without drama. Because once someone shows you they're capable of running parallel lives, you don't negotiate better boundaries. You remove yourself from the intersection. And without two lives to manage, Caleb didn't seem to know who he was anymore. About 6 weeks after everything unraveled, I saw Caleb again. Not planned. Not dramatic. Just coincidence. It happened at a rooftop bar downtown on a warm Friday night. Different crowd than the circles we used to move in. More relaxed, less performative. I was there with a few friends from work, standing near the edge of the terrace when I noticed him across the room. I saw him before he saw me. And the first thing I noticed was that he looked smaller. Not physically, just less certain. The energy he used to carry, that constant sense that he was the center of the moment, the person everyone was orbiting around, it wasn't there anymore. He looked like someone trying to remember how to stand in a room that no longer belonged to him. Eventually, he noticed me. He froze for half a second. Then he did exactly what he had always done when a situation became uncomfortable. He performed. Soft smile. Controlled walk across the room. Casual tone. Wow, he said when he reached the table. You look good. I nodded once. Hi, Caleb. He stood there for a second like he expected me to fill the silence for him. When I didn't, he leaned against the table slightly and tried a different approach. Things got out of hand, he said. People blew everything up. You know how rumors work. Rumors. I let him finish. Then I asked a single question. Did you ever tell Ariana the full truth before I did? He didn't answer. He looked away first. That was enough. After a moment, he sighed and tried to pivot again. You could have handled it differently, he said. You didn't have to embarrass me. That word again. Embarrass. As if honesty becomes humiliation when it exposes something someone hoped to keep hidden. I didn't embarrass you, I said calmly. I corrected a timeline. He studied me carefully then, like he was trying to locate the emotional reaction that used to exist. The frustration, the pleading, the need for closure. It wasn't there. That seemed to bother him more than anger would have. He asked if I was seeing someone. I shrugged slightly. I'm spending time with people who don't require parallel storylines. He flinched at that. Then came the final attempt. You know, he said quietly, I never stopped caring about you. A year earlier, that sentence might have landed somewhere. Now it sounded like contingency planning. Caring while maintaining backups isn't care. It's strategy. I hope next time, I said evenly, you figure out what you actually want before inviting someone into it. He didn't like that either. But for once, he didn't argue. There was no shouting, no final confrontation. Just a quiet realization settling between us that the dynamic had changed completely. He wasn't the center of the narrative anymore. He was just a chapter. I left the rooftop bar about 10 minutes later. He didn't follow. And for the first time since that dinner months earlier, I didn't feel reactive. I felt finished. But there was still one last piece that closed the loop. About 2 months after everything collapsed, Ariana messaged me once more. The tone was different this time. Short. Direct. You were right, she wrote. I should have checked earlier. We met for coffee once. Not to bond. Not to analyze Caleb. Just to compare timelines and close the story properly. She told me Caleb had described me as emotionally unstable, someone who refused to accept the breakup, someone he was trying to phase out gently. Meanwhile, he had been spending most nights at my apartment and introducing me to new coworkers as his girlfriend. Parallel narratives only work when no one compares notes. Ariana admitted she ignored a few early red flags because she wanted the story of them getting back together to be true. I admitted I ignored the early hotel signs because I assumed Caleb wouldn't risk something stable. We both learned the same lesson in different ways. When someone wants options, they manufacture ambiguity. After that coffee, there was nothing left to untangle. Caleb tried one last time through a mutual friend. He said he had been overwhelmed. He said he didn't expect everything to collapse at once. He said he felt attacked from both sides. That part stuck with me. He didn't say he regretted lying. He regretted losing control. That's the difference. Leo and I did start spending more time together eventually. Slowly. No theatrics. No revenge undertones. Just straightforward interest between two people who weren't trying to maintain secret versions of their lives. And the most noticeable difference was the absence of noise. No comparisons. No ghosts from the past. No hotel nights explained as networking. Just clarity. The truth is, I didn't destroy anything. I stepped out the moment Caleb announced I was replaceable. Everything after that was simply the two realities he built colliding without my cooperation. And if there's one thing that experience taught me, it's this. When someone tells you they're working things out with someone else, believe them. Just make sure they do it single.